watching eNews Direct. I'm Tutuzile Ramela here. The stories we're tracking for you this evening. Musi Maimane says racists shouldn't bother voting for the DA. Wits says students who cannot pay registration won't be barred. Remember, you can have a say on any of our stories. Do find us on Twitter and Facebook. That's at eNews Direct, using the hashtags Musi on race and hashtag Wits. But first, we start with this. The Democratic Alliance is working hard on fixing its image in a crucial election year. Musi Maimane says the party doesn't want racists. This after discriminatory remarks by some of its members on social media.
Racists are not welcome in the DA. I want to go a step further and say this. If you are thinking of voting for the DA and you are a racist, please don't vote for us.
The likes of Diane Kohler-Barnard and Penny Sparrow have caused a public headache for the Democratic Alliance. Kohler-Barnard endorsed the return of an apartheid-era president, while Sparrow referred to black beachgoers as monkeys. Their comments and actions sparked racial tensions and debate. But the DA believes they don't represent the views of many people in the country.
I know that the vast majority of white South Africans don't think like Penny Sparrow does. And I know that many South Africans are playing their part to redress the legacy of the past.
Musi Maimane says there's no place for racists in the DA, and he wants everyone in the party to make an anti-racism pledge. He's also hinted at plans to firm up where the party stands on black economic empowerment, an area where the DA has often been criticized. Just as recently as last week, the DA's Johannesburg mayoral candidate, Herman Mashaba, admitted that he benefited from BEE, even though he's on record for not supporting the policy. The party says the current form of economic redress is not benefiting the poor majority and needs to change. Ulimgambi, Johannesburg.
Right, let's bring you more on this now. I'm joined in studio by our in-house commentator, Angelo Fick. A very good evening to you, Angelo. Your overall interpretation of today's events. Why is Musi Maimane coming out and saying this now?
Well, clearly there is an opportunity in South Africa at the moment, given what we've seen over the last 20 or 30 days. But also the Democratic Alliance as the official opposition is in an election year, and it needs to shed some of its baggage around issues of racism and race. The Diane Kohler-Barnard issue is one component of that, but the party has generally been perceived as being the party of white interests, and as a consequence of that, in this South Africa, as a party in which racism hasn't been exorcised. And so I think it's an opportune moment for the leader of the opposition to attempt to do that. The success of this particular attempt, I think, is the problem.
And let's stay on that success. I mean, given what Musi Maimane said today, is the DA really doing enough to root out racism?
The difference between the DA's rooting out its internal racism and the DA wishing to address racism in South Africa is an important distinction to make at the moment. On the basis of this speech, this remains at the level of rhetoric or symbolism. That Musi Maimane wants to do a whole bunch of things around racism, but his ideas about racism and race in contemporary South Africa, I think, need to be updated and need to be given a slightly more, shall we say, informed scientific perspective. As for how the DA deals with its internal issues around race, whiteness and racism, that, I think, is not adequately addressed in this particular document, and we have known this for at least the last 2 years since the last general election. But Musi Maimane has given himself, I think, rather a big task in this regard, because solving racism in South Africa is a big problem. Solving racism in the DA has proven to be not quite as big a problem, but as substantial an issue to deal with.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thank you very much. Angelo Fick is our in-house commentator. And still staying with news on that, another victory for the Fees Must Fall student movement. Wits University says it has agreed not to penalize students who cannot make the upfront registration fee. It has promised not to exclude anyone for financial reasons, including those already in debt to the university.
After disruptions marred registration at Wits University, Finally, there's a deal. Wits says students who can't afford the first instalment of this year's fees will still be allowed to register. No student will be financially excluded if they're unable to make the first payment, and they won't be charged interest. Students with outstanding debt will also be allowed to register. The university and SRC have pledged to try to raise funds to clear the debts of those who owe more than 1,000 but less than 5,000 rand. Wits will ask the provincial government to cover the debts of those who owe more. The university has agreed to move more quickly in reaching a decision on the minimum wage for workers. Management and student leaders have also agreed to find non-violent ways to resolve issues, adding that police should not use undue force, which violates human rights.
Give him back his job or pay 25 million rand. That's the message from Lawyers for Media personality Gareth Clifford. However, I beg your pardon, they filed court papers today against broadcaster eNews. Cliff was booted off the judging panel after a comment about freedom of speech relating to the Penny Sparrow debacle.
Gareth Cliff's lawyers have filed this 83-page application. In it, pretty much detailing how they believe eNews has violated the media personality's constitutional and common law rights.
They violated his right to equality in the way they've treated him vis-a-vis the other judges that also said things that the eNews found to be inappropriate.
Mabuza remains firm that his client must return to the SA Idols judging panel, and the clock is ticking.
He needs to be reinstated so that he can continue with the auditions for Idols that are starting on the 29th. And if they don't do that, we want an order to stop the auditions for Idols pending the determination of the main action, the 25 million main action.
There's a lot to be done before then, but Cliff's legal team can certainly claim one small victory already.
You cannot have a situation where they say they fired him but still use his image to advertise.
eNews has until Wednesday to indicate whether they intend on opposing Cliff's application. Up until now, the channel has remained mum on the matter. With Idols one of their popular shows, one can only imagine the difficult conversations taking place in this building. Nontobeko Sibisi, Johannesburg.
International news now, when heavy snowfall and strong winds are forcing residents in Japan to evacuate their homes. Around 4,000 households have already moved to shelters as authorities warn of possible flooding. There have been huge delays in public transport with deep snow falling over much of the country. A suicide bomber on a motorcycle has blown himself up at a police checkpoint in northwest Pakistan. At least 10 people have been killed and 20 others wounded. And environmental officials in the Peruvian capital of Lima are using vultures to crack down on illegal dumping. Now, the birds are fitted with GPS tracking devices and GoPro cameras. They are recording the rubbish dumps they feed on and are trained to return to their handlers. Right, let's see what's trending in the world of social media. I'm joined again by Gareth Edwards. And Gareth, we put the question on Twitter whether the DA's anti-racism stance is enough. What do people have to say?
All right, well, this is the joys of social media. We actually put this out on @eNews Direct. You can go and vote for yourself. Take a look at this. We put the question on our Twitter account, and 72% of people who have voted so far answering Dudu's question, no, it's not going to make a difference as far as this pledge is concerned. Three big Twitter trends we're following today. It has been a Musi on race all day. The man coming under fire, but also many people liking what he says. The DA has taken steps to root out racism within the ranks. The opposition party now requires new members to sign an anti-racism pledge. You know, just a dead Twitter bird? That's because if you're addicted to Twitter, you would have actually been forced to speak to another human being earlier this morning. This after Twitter went offline around the world for 2 hours. No reason, though, for the system going offline yet. And you'll see the word Oscar right on the far end there. The hashtag Oscar So White is back. Several Hollywood stars are threatening to boycott the Academy Awards this year after no black actors were nominated for this year's Oscars. All of these stories, of course, you can go and find them on Twitter as we have brought them to you here. You can also find them on Facebook. But don't forget our brand new eNews Direct page on eNCA.com/direct has gone live. Go and take a look at any of the news you've missed there.
So first they steal your identity and then they kill you off. It's a massive insurance scam and it's on the rise in South Africa. Insurance companies, banks and Home Affairs met today to find ways to clamp down on dodgy death claims.
7,360 fraudulent insurance claims of over 400 million rand were stopped in 2014. That's significantly up from 2,093 cases in 2013. And irregular claims for deaths tripled between 2013 and 2014.
The banks are very robust in wanting to make sure that they are protecting their clients, that they know who they're doing business with, but they also want to make sure that there's nobody stealing anybody else's identity.
The insurance industry says it has strict payout measures in place.
One of their top priorities is to make sure that they can pay out the claim, especially in the entry-level market. So for them, at a very first stage is to make sure, is the person who he says he is and the family members that we can trace through the population register.
Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba says it's in everyone's interest that fraudulent claims are wiped out.
Fraudulent claims result in increased premiums being passed on to the policyholder.
Gigaba says more innovative ideas and strategies are needed to fight insurance and bank fraud.
Right, let's see how the markets performed today. Right, let's check in with the Weather Center now. Here's Candice.
Good evening and welcome to your weather forecast for Wednesday. We'll see an increase in thunderstorm activity over the interior as the week continues, with rain in the forecast along the east coast on Wednesday, scattered thunder showers over the eastern interior, and you'll also see a band of thunderstorms starting to settle in over the northern Cape, and that increases as we head towards Friday. Here's a look at your weather forecast across South Africa on Wednesday, with the possibility of morning drizzle for Pietermaritzburg. We're expecting rain along the coast and a cooler day over the interior part of KZN, with the possibility of thunder showers. Morning rain starts off the day over the eastern part of the Eastern Cape, with a warm day along the coast and highs in the mid-30s for Somerset East and Graaff-Reinet. Hot weather continues over the interior part of the Western Cape, with highs in the middle and upper 30s. Cape Town at 34 degrees with a warm and dry day along the coast. Georgia 27. You'll see thunder showers from Springbok and Alexander Bay all the way through to Kimberley. Part of the dry day over the southeastern part of the Northern Cape. Temperatures remain hot here. You'll also see dry weather over the southern Free State, Zastron, partly cloudy at 30, with scattered thunderstorms over the eastern part. Harrismith at 27. 34 degrees for Vryburg, with the rest of the highs in the low 30s for the northwest with isolated thundershowers. Things remain dry for the Lowveld, but with thundershowers for the rest of Limpopo. 28 degrees as we head towards Mokopane. It'll be a cooler day for Mpumalanga with some drizzle for Bombela at 28. 23 degrees for Ermelo and eMakazeni, with scattered thunderstorms over the western part of Mpumalanga as well as for Gauteng. It'll be a cooler day for Gauteng on Wednesday. 27 degrees for Johannesburg and Pretoria at 29. Now on Thursday we're expecting some drizzle for George, but the warm and dry day for the rest of the coastline. You'll see an increase in thunderstorm activity over the interior, particularly over the northern part, and that continues through to Friday as the rainfall settles in over the central part, with some drizzle expected for George and Port Elizabeth, and a slightly cooler day for Cape Town. That's all from the Weather Centre for now. Have a great night.
Right, here's what's coming up after the break. Movie stars threaten to boycott the Oscars because the nominations are too white. Welcome back. Now, several Hollywood stars are threatening to boycott the Academy Awards.
Only white stars have been nominated for the much coveted acting Oscars.
And it's seen the return of the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite, which started trending before last year's ceremony, with some high-profile stars voicing their anger.
Actress Jada Pinkett Smith, whose husband Will Smith has been snubbed for his performance in Concussion, has vented on social media, as has director Spike Lee.
Now, he's pointed out that in 2 consecutive years, 40 white actors and no black actors have been nominated for the Oscars.
The Academy has the right to acknowledge whomever they choose, to invite whomever they choose. And now I think that it's our responsibility now to make the change. Maybe it is time that we pull back our resources and we put them back into our communities, into our programs, and we make programs for ourselves that acknowledge us in ways that we see fit, that are just as good as the so-called mainstream ones.
Right, here's a reminder of the day's top stories before we say goodbye. Musi Maimane says racists shouldn't bother voting for the DA. Wits does away with hefty upfront registration fees. And that's a wrap from the eNews Direct team.
We are back tomorrow, but your favorite drama, Rhythm City, is up next.
Remember, you can share your views with us. Do send us an email to enewsdirect@etv.co.za.
Or you can just chat to us on Twitter and Facebook, and our handle is @eNewsDirect.
Until next time, have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.